Okay, people. Star Wars. Star Wars. When I set out to rank these movies, I did some research and watched some of the prequel trilogy because I was pretty sure they were going to show up fairly quickly on this list. But to answer your question, what am I ranking these things on? Well, as what makes a good movie is all opinion. It's kind of just my opinion. And I've noticed when I'm looking at these, I'm noticing acting, I'm noticing storyline, I'm noticing action scenes, I'm noticing mood, all of these things. My list is probably not going to be the same as your list because what I look for in a Star Wars movie might not be what you look for in a Star Wars movie. And to be frank, what I look for in a Star Wars movie might depend on which Star Wars movie it is. I have different expectations for the seventh movie than I do for the second, right? That makes sense, right? It's impossible to remove us from our historical relation to the Star Wars movies. Like, I'm never not going to have seen Star Wars Episode 2 in theaters at midnight. Like, that's just my relationship to it. I'm never not going to have seen Episode 7 as a complete ass adult without having seen the trailer or anything. I came into it fresh. That's just the way it is. Like, I'm going to judge these based on my opinion. So don't get too mad. Think of it as a discussion and feel free to discuss in the comments. But to cut to the chase, the worst Star Wars movie is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Just by a hair, I think. Just by a hair. Now, I rewatched this movie in the last week because I was pretty sure this was going to be the first video, and it's not as bad as I remember, right? Like, there's things that work about it, and we'll get to these later on in the video, but it's probably the worst mostly because of the acting. Really? Like, let's be honest. The problem with the prequel trilogy, in my opinion, the main problem with the prequel trilogy, especially now that we've seen some of the new sequel movies, is the acting. Like, the acting of the main characters is not good. It's just not. And especially Anakin. Let's be honest. The story is Anakin's story. The prequel trilogy is about how the Republic turns the Empire, how the Emperor becomes the Emperor, and how Darth Vader becomes Darth Vader. And the story, and especially writing and acting around Anakin, is bad. It's really bad, and it's especially noticeable in this movie, especially the first half. Now, the main story beats behind Anakin, especially in this movie, makes sense. He gets corrupted by a love he's told he's not supposed to have against his basic emotions and desires and needs. He feels guilt about being unable to save his mother. Like, those are dramatic things that make sense as to why someone would turn from good to evil. But he's such a whiny little bitch in the first half of this movie that you just don't care by the time his mother dies. Like, that scene where he has to be emotional about that, it makes sense. Like, his acting in that is not necessarily that bad. It's just the fact that he's been such a off-putting, unlikable little teenage douche the rest of the movie that makes him not work as a tragic figure. Like, I'm not a professional movie maker, right? But I've seen enough to know that this was probably supposed to be a tragedy of how someone that was good and could have potentially been the best thing about the Jedi becomes the worst thing about the Jedi. And you kind of have to like someone before they turn to evil in order to give a crap about that. It's wrestling 101. Like, you're going to hate someone more if you liked them first. That's just how it is. So, really, the first 40 minutes of this movie, or an hour, I think, are kind of why it sucks. Like, the further it goes on and the more you get into the action scenes, the better it gets. And the movie's full of good action scenes, like good inventive action scenes that you wouldn't necessarily see in some of the new sequels. It has inventive ideas. Like, the prequel trilogy was never afraid to try something new. Oh, Anakin was made from midichlorians. Sure. Oh, what would happen if we had a Jedi ground war? Let's try it. What if there was a cloning facility with freaking manta rays on an ocean? Like, the ideas and creativity of this movie and this series in general are there, especially compared to other movies, Force Awakens, that just kind of do the same thing. So that should definitely be praised when it comes to the prequel trilogy. But the first part of this movie, like I said, it's bad. Like, it's real bad. In comparison to many of the other movies on this list, and especially the other movies in the prequel trilogy, like, it starts off with a little bit of a bang with, like, the attack on Padme's ship, but then it's, like, slow. It's real slow. There's people talking in CGI hallways and people talking in CGI rooms and people talking in diners, and it's just kind of slow. And the first part of the movie is also where no one is likable. Nobody. The Jedi are stupid. Our first encounter with Anakin is him complaining in an elevator. Like, if you've ever heard the concept of the cat in the tree, like, why do we like our heroes? Why do we like Han Solo the first time we see him? Probably because he's being a smartass and evades death by not being a goody two shoes. He's charismatic, he's smart, we like him. Why do we like Princess Leia the first time we see her? Because, I mean, she hides the thing in the droid, she shoots a stormtrooper, and then she mouths off to Darth Vader. Like, you build up Darth Vader in that first part of A New Hope, and then Leia is not afraid of him whatsoever. Like, that's why you like her. For Anakin in this movie, which is essentially resetting his character because it's a new actor and it's been a few years since in the timeline since the other movie came out. He's complaining in an elevator. He's a whiny little bitch in an elevator, and you don't like him. And then he has a really awkward scene with Padme where he looks like a creep, and that kind of sets the tone for their entire romance, which is also not great. It's just kind of unsettling and creeping. You don't necessarily see why Padme falls for him because he's just kind of this emotional little douchebag, really. And Padme doesn't want help to be protected, and Obi-Wan's kind of a jerk. Like, no one is likable in this first part of the movie, so you don't like anybody. If they skipped that part and went to, like, say the worms are coming in to kill Padme, right? You don't know what's going on. It's kind of mysterious, and bam, the Jedi come in and they kill the worms. That's your first introduction, and then they go have an action scene where it looks like they're capable people. Like, that would go a long way to create a likable protagonist for this movie. But that's not what happens. It's bad because of the acting in that first part of the movie and whatever. But like I said, action scenes, pretty good. There's a lot of CGI, maybe a little too much. It does feel like Obi-Wan's just in a room by himself, but the action gets better. So while it's the worst Star Wars movie, there are things about it I appreciate now, especially with the new sequels coming out. Let me know what you think. Why do you agree with me that this is the worst? Why do you vehemently disagree with me about why this is better than some of the other movies? Let's create a discussion.